If we think about the 4 different compass directions that you could possibly have, well, we've got the classic north, east, south, west, with generally north at the top just by convention, then east, and then south, and then west. North, east, south at the bottom, and west, with east and west opposite each other and north and south opposite each other. There are 4 more that we could add in as well. We could add in the compass directions between each of these 4 main ones. The compass direction between north and east, we get northeast. Between east and south, well, southeast. Southwest, between south and west. And northwest, between north and west. The best part of the UK. No, you don't get to argue with that, it's just a fact. Those compass points, actually, honestly, that's it really for compass points. There isn't really much else you need to know. Further things I could point out, well, there is an old kind of line of thinking that suggests that the word news, as in what's happening in the world, comes from the compass points, north, east, west, south, N-E-W-S, giving news as in coming from the 4 corners of the globe. Actually, that tends to be a bit disputed now. It's probably more likely that news is called news because it's new. Other things we need to know, well, you might occasionally see maps. There are certain types of questions that use maps. The compass points don't generally feature too heavily in those questions, but if they are going to, they will generally only focus on the north, the east, the south and the west, and ignore the 4 in-between ones. And generally speaking, north will be at the top, just by convention.
Here is a map of Manchester city centre. Now, the whole point with any map is that it shows you the layout of a place, but it also shows you where things are in relation to everything else that's there. And that idea of things being in relation to each other is key. Clearly, this map is not life-size. If the map was life-size, it would be as big as the city centre, and there would be little point having the map. But what this map is the whole of Manchester city centre shrunk down, so that everything is, relatively speaking, the same size in relation to everything else on here as it is in real life. So if something is twice as big as something else in real life, then on the map, those 2 locations would have the same relationship. That one of the places would be twice as big as the other, just like in real life. Now, the most important part of this map, and in fact any map then, would be this here. Let's just zoom in on that a moment. Now, we can see there a line, and that line has written next to it the numbers 200 metres. What this is here is what's called a map scale. The idea being that this tells us the relative size of the map. Now, this is one way of showing a map scale. The idea being that if we measured the length of that line, wherever on the map we saw a line that was that length, that would be 200 metres in real life. If we measure something on the map that's twice as long as that line, it would be 2 lots of the 200 metres is 400 metres in real life. And so this map scale lets us measure things on the map and use that to work out how big the distances are in real life. As I said, this is one particular way of showing a map scale, the idea of having a line and giving that line a real life length. There are other ways of showing map scales as well.
In terms of the exam, map scales are likely to be shown in one of 4 ways. The first way would be to use that picture version. Draw a certain length of line and then write down how long a line of that length is in real life. For example, this first one here, this idea that this length of line, whenever you see that much line on the diagram, the map diagram, that is 100 metres in real life length. The second way to show it would be to just write it down in words and say that 1 centimetre on the map is equal to 2 kilometres in real life. Or they could write exactly that same sentence as a ratio. as we are used to this idea of the ratio dots in the middle meaning the word to. So we could write the same scale down, that 1 centimetre on the map to 2 kilometres in real life. The final way to show the scale would be to use the ratio dot again, but this time have no units. This one, for example, 1 to 10,000. The fact that there are no units on here means that the units don't change between what goes in on the left-hand side on the map and what comes out on the right-hand side in real life. As in, if we are measuring in centimetres on the map, 1 centimetre on the map is equal to 10,000 centimetres in real life. No units shown means that the units don't change. In these two previous ones, the units are shown, and I suppose in the top one, the units are implied. The units are shown to change, whereas in this last one, no units are given, which means the units don't change between the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the scale. The accurate scale drawing shows 3 towns: Town A, Town B, and Town C. The scale is 1 to 50,000. Part A, find the real distance between Town A and Town B in kilometres. So these kind of questions always go in the same way. First thing we have to notice is we have to notice the scale. 1 to 50,000. No units are given here, which means that it's one of those type of questions where the units are not going to change between what we put in on the left-hand side and get out on the right-hand side. Part A asks us to find the real distance between Town A and Town B in kilometres. We're going to ignore the kilometres bit for a minute, we'll come back to that later. Well, to find the real distance, we're going to have to use the scale. And to use the scale, we're going to have to know the distance on the map between Town A and Town B. So we grab a ruler and we just measure between Town A and Town B. We can, if we want, draw in the line between Town A and Town B, if it will be helpful to measure it. That is very much a personal preference thing. You might find that you can measure it without needing to draw the line in which case you don't have to. But let's say we want to draw the line in, so we grab a ruler. We're going to draw the line in from Town A to Town B. And we're going to draw from the centre of the cross to the centre of the other cross. And there we go. And that line is what I'm going to measure. Now I'm going to measure this. I'm going to measure it in centimetres. So I'm going to go from the 0 on my ruler up to 6. We're halfway between 6 and 7, so it will be 6.5 centimetres there. And I'm going to make a note of that. So the distance here is 6.5 centimetres. Now I need to come back to this scale, so I'm going to write down the scale. I'm going to put units in the scale, because it will help me keep track of what I'm doing. 1 to 50,000. There are no units given to me in the scale, which means I can add them. There are no units given to me, which means the units will not change between the left and the right. So I put 1 centimetre in on the left, and I get 50,000 centimetres out on the right. I know that sounds like an awful lot of centimetres. That's why later on we're going to be converting it into kilometres. What I'm effectively doing is I'm scaling that ratio up. I'm scaling up the scale. 1 centimetre on the map is 50,000 centimetres in real life. I've got 6.5 centimetres. So what I'm effectively doing is I'm going to times both sides of the scale by 6.5. I maybe grab my calculator if I need to, or I just work it out off to the side somewhere. And that's going to give me 325,000 centimetres. And that's the first part of the answer. It's a 3-mark question. This 1 mark will probably come from the 6.5 centimetres, so having a measurement within a given range that's allowable. The 2nd mark will come from attempting to scale up that ratio to get this kind of number. Probably reaching this number would get you that 2nd mark, in fact. The 3rd mark will come from this last part of the question, which is to convert it into kilometres, because this is currently in centimetres. I know it's in centimetres. There are no units given to me in the ratio that is there as the scale, which means we are still working in the same units. We haven't switched them. We now need to switch to kilometres. Now, we don't know very much about switching centimetres directly to kilometres, so maybe we could go centimetres to metres first of all. So I'm going to make a note quickly here that 1 metre is 100 centimetres. 100 centimetres in a metre. If I then divide this by 100, I would find out how many metres there are. So I'm going to divide this by 100, and it turns out that would be 3,250 metres. Now I now know as well that 1 kilometre is 1,000 metres. 1 kilometre is 1,000 metres. Well, I've got 3,250 metres. So if 1 kilometre is 1,000 metres, 2 kilometres is 2,000 metres, 3 kilometres is 3,000 metres, so it's going to be a little bit more than 3.25, because all the digits are going to be in the same order. 3, then 2, then 5. We're just rescaling the answer. So our final answer then would be 3.25 kilometres. Part B asks us to find the real distance between town A and town C in kilometres. Very much the same kind of thing. In fact, it's quite a generous question, this, in that if you get the first part right, you should be able to get the second part right, because it is basically the same question again. So A through to C, we need to draw in that line there, and we're going to measure this one. Well, that comes out as 5 centimetres, I make that. So we start with the scale again, 1 centimetre to 50,000 centimetres. We want to scale up to 5 centimetres, so we're going to times by 5, which means we're going to times by 5 on the other side of the ratio as well, the real life side. 50,000 times 5, 250,000 centimetres. The scales are the same as in the previous question, so we could divide by 100 to get 2,500 metres, which will come out as 2.5 kilometres. And there is our final answer. Realistically speaking, the only other thing they could ask you to do in a map scale question is ask you to mark a certain point on a map using the scale. So they could give you the real life distance and have you work back to work out how far it will have to be on the map. It's basically the same thing as this, just in reverse.